All right, so I asked about the podium this morning. So if I start to resemble a caged tiger going back and forth, let me know. Especially if I start, just feel free to tell me. So again, my name is Bryan Chaney. I don't know, clicker would probably help. So this is the start. There we go. All right, there's my handle, sourcing executive. But part of what I do is really teach people how to think about telling their story. And storytelling is such a powerful tool. It's really how we determine the common threads that we all share. And storytelling itself is eons and eons old, whether it was around a campfire or huddled around the microfiche like any other nerds. Nobody? Geeks? Nobody? Nobody? Oh, nobody got my microfiche reference. Okay. That hashtag Dewey Decimal System, maybe? No? So I'm going to click this because the first, does anybody recognize this? Okay. So this what does uno mean? All right, you speak Spanish. So I am going to continue walking, by the way, because I have to pace. I don't know why. It's like once I stop moving, I stop talking, and I don't know why. But whenever through this story, whenever you see something that resembles a number, the first person that shouts it out is actually going to get one of these. And I give these out when I speak a lot. I didn't bring 100 of them, or however many people there are, but I wanted to keep it interactive. Number one, it's short, so I want to get to the point. Number two, so who said uno is one? First person, right over here. Are you sure? Hey, if you're wearing a pink shirt and you're pointing at somebody else, here you go. All right, so there's one. And these are 5-hour energies. I love to give out several hours of energy when I speak. So this is the first secret to employer brand storytelling, right? And when I say secret like lasers, right? So secret they're not secrets, but they're things that we tend to forget as we're telling this story, as we're telling this story to our employees, as we're telling this story to our prospects. We forget that it's storytelling, which is a science, but it's also primarily an art. And I think one of the things that we forget as the first piece is we've all got stuff that motivates us. We've all got something that is our trigger, whether it makes us happy, it makes us inquisitive, gets us curious. And I like to call this what gets you amped. For a couple of reasons. Number one, I have an affinity for energy drinks. Number two, AMPT is a nice little acronym that I created for AMPT. And A, it stands for advancement. So career advancement, progression, whatever that means for you, whether it's within an industry, whether it's within the specific division of your company, career advancement is a huge driver. This is a big one. So is anybody not motivated by money? Anybody? No? Not a single person besides Will Staney? All right. Oh, you're not motivated by money because you just got a 5-hour energy. So money, remuneration, benefits, everything that falls into this bucket, right? Huge motivator. We look at the culture of the people that we work with, our team, and that really is our ecosystem. That's our culture. Our culture is the team of people that we work with. We like to think as employer brand marketers that, oh, well, we've defined this culture. We've created it. We've created our EVP. Well, your real value proposition is from your people, and they're the ones who know what value you bring. And really, it's one of the things that I said a couple months ago when I spoke that still rings true to me is your culture is how good of a manager you have. So your specific ecosystem really changes from person to person, division to division. But the people that you work with really impact your enjoyment of your job. And I would say that's A, M, P, and T for technology. Now, you'll have to cut me a little bit of slack here, because technology can mean a lot of different things. So this in particular is innovation, ideas, pushing the envelope, whether it's the technology of that specific company, what you do, pushing the development of that industry, of that company. So if you know as a Java developer that you're going to get to work on something that's next level, that's going to really put yourself out there as a developer, and I guess I'll say a developer of choice, or highly desirable developer, then that's going to be a big driver for you. And how do you put all this into action? Well, one of my clients is in oil and gas. And I actually did a survey, and I'm continuing to do a survey about which one of these factors are most important to the people that we're trying to recruit. So as you see the numbers up here, number 1, 2, I don't know if you can see it down here, 3, and then 4. In oil and gas, the number 1 driver is career advancement for the test group that we've studied. So career advancement, innovation and ideas, compensation, and culture are the people that you work with. Those were specifically in that order as to what drives people to change a job or take a job. So does anybody have any idea about what you would do with that kind of information? Cricket. Create a story, create content, and which one of these would you talk about first? Advancement, right? And it's not only figuring out what to mention, what to lead with, but what else needs to support that information. So as we look at, this is a number 2. Anybody? Anybody? All right. Who said dose? Over here, maybe? Here you go. All right. So 2, the second secret to employer brand storytelling. Probably helps if I grab the clicker, because I like to walk. Remember? Tiger. So the second thing around storytelling is transparency. I know Lars asked how many people said the word transparency or within the last week or whatever time frame it was. I raised my hand. Not all transparency is good. And I think what's key is to know what to share, know what's right, what's compelling for your audience. And thinking about transparency, yes, you need to share some stuff, but some things you want to keep for later in the process. Some conversations are good for earlier in the process, earlier when the person's in a decision-making mode. Some are better for a little bit later on the process, when you've got some of that interest, but then you want to really answer the questions, because when you put information out there, that creates questions. Okay, what else? When I see, okay, you've got career advancement. Okay, you support career advancement. What else? What's the rest of the story? Right? For all you Paul Harvey fans out there. I know, it's an old reference, but I can't help but remember staying with my grandma, and she's like, shh, Paul Harvey's coming on. So the things that you want to remember when you're figuring out what to tell, what not to tell, you want to leave a little bit of mystery. Okay, leave a little bit of mystery. And that doesn't mean keep something a secret, but that means don't throw everything at your talent at once. Show of hands. Does anybody know that this gentleman up here is a private investigator? Is anybody familiar? These references? Wow. Better. I wasn't sure if everybody would get this reference. So I also supplemented this with this reference. Leave a little bit of mystery. Okay, and what I mean by that is when you get an email, how many people read the entire email? How many people skim the email? You want to figure out what's important to you. So you want to give them a limited amount of information at a time, especially if you're recruiting for them and it's a cold message. It's a cold approach. They don't know why they should care. So figure out what's most important and what's not, and leave it out. Leave it out for a later stage conversation. And I would say one of the key things as you're putting together your message around telling that story is letting them fill in the blank. So 2 + 2 is?
4.
Thank you. You let your audience fill in the blank. So what that does, it keeps them engaged because they have to solve that problem. And if they're not working upstairs, they're tuned out. They're not listening to whatever story you're telling, good or bad. So figure out what you want to say and figure out what you don't want to say. Because, and everybody who's looked at reviews on Glassdoor will understand that it's not all, unicorns and rainbows when people are telling that story. And one of the things that I can attest to is that one of my previous employers writes actually their own reviews on Glassdoor for their own company. And I can tell specifically by words that they use and phrases that that's one of the C-level executives. Okay? So figure out what you don't want to say, and don't tell them that you're cool. Don't tell them that you're hip. Let them tell the story. Because when a company is telling you that they're the best place to work in the world, it sends up what? Exactly. And as we continue to move, you want to think about the shoes that they're in, the shoes that they're filling, whether they're worker boots. Okay, figure out that what they're doing, the words are you, your, and yours. Nowhere did I say I or we, because you have to think from their perspective. Their perspective is the one that matters. And if you can't identify with worker boots, maybe you can identify with these. Anybody shout out, where's this from? Back to the Future, exactly. So figuring out what they identify with and knowing that you're going to have to think like them. That's one of the most powerful things is perspective. So as we go through all the things that motivate us, perspective is probably the most important. Does anybody remember this scene? Yeah? So perspective. And perspective is so, so important. And I'll ask everyone in the room who feels like it to stand up. What does it look like right now? It's a different perspective. It's a different way to look at everything. Now, standing up probably doesn't change your perspective that much, right? But standing up on a chair might. Standing up and recognizing that everyone's perspective is different and customizing your story to that perspective is what helps you resonate with your audience. You can all be seated. So, it's a 3. So just in case you weren't sure, I love movies and I love the 80s. Good job. All right, so the third thing that matters when you're telling a story is to think of your audience as the hero. So how many people have seen companies that talk about what it's like to work there, that talk about their experience, that talk about their awards, that think from where they're sitting? They say I, they say we, we're the best. Okay? Who wants to work for or think that they're working for someone else's benefit? You're working towards being a hero in your own story. So you don't want to be Luke Skywalker. You want to be the little green guy. So bear with me. You want to be the person who can mentor your talent. Mentor the people who are trying to figure out what they do, what the next step is. If you approach your communication and your storytelling like you're the mentor and they're the hero, then they'll understand what you're really trying to say. So think like Yoda, don't think like Luke. Sorry. And yes, I don't have a picture of a Gundark in here, although I like to use Gundarks. If anybody's a Star Wars person, you understand what a Gundark is. Is anybody? Did I miss anybody? One person. We're right there. So being the mentor instead of the hero. And it's important, as you're thinking about that perspective, that they're on a journey. And all you're doing is providing a path. So if you're guiding them along that path as their mentor, they're going to understand it. They're going to appreciate it. And those are the things that actually get people engaged early on in the process when they don't know why they should care about being engaged. So by the way, if you ever want to see a full video about this particular slide, just Google TED and storytelling. And there's a lady who did an observation, so you saw it, you saw the TED video, of how great storytellers construct their stories. And you have to start with where you are and then go back and forth in the process to where you want to be. So it's important to go back and forth, let them see where they are, let them see what it could be, and then remind them where they are again. And it's a dance back and forth till you reach the new bliss, the new norm, that new job. So that's something that you have to look for. Steve Jobs used this structure. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used this structure. So think about that particular structure, and not just we're great, but we're great because you're coming from this to us. And we have audio?
We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion. Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. To quote from Whitman, "O me, O life of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, what good amid these, O me, O life?" Answer, that you are here, that life exists and identity, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. That the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be?
I can't tell you how many times I watched that and got emotional almost every time. What will your verse be? Those are the things that you have to think about as you're telling the story. That's me. Questions?
All right. So I have to open the Q&A with this. And there's a story behind that. Both Bryan and I are big Movember enthusiasts. So every month in November, you'll see us with hideous, haggard mustaches. Will Saney as well. There's a handful of Mobros in here. And so as Bryan was putting together his deck, he was talking about how many 80 references he could embed inside of the deck. And I said, if you embed a Magnum slide, I will high-five you before Q&A. So there's your high five.
Thank you.
One question, I think that the storytelling narrative is something that comes up a lot in employer branding. So when you're a corporate recruiter and you're thinking about how to, you've sourced some stories internally and you want to figure out what's the best way to convey those stories for branding purposes. There's lots of different channels that you can use. So what do you recommend for somebody who has kind of embraced storytelling as a means of employer branding, and what channels they can use to actually get that message out?
Well, the first thing that you do is look at your career site to see where the traffic is coming from. That helps from a channel selection perspective. So you know where people are getting their story, I should say, in spite of or despite your best efforts or lack of efforts. So figuring out where they're getting their information and looking at those specific channels to tell the story. Now just remember, something that Lars actually said earlier today was social media is a channel. It's not a strategy. And I agree wholeheartedly with that, because you can tell a story through social media, but you can also tell a story on your careers blog, through video, through a specific landing page for a targeted group of talent or skill set. And so being able to tell that story, figuring out where your talent is going and directing where you want your talent to go. So I'm a huge believer in campaign style marketing, driving people to one source of information. So figuring out how to drive people to that information so that they can get the specific story, not driving people to your corporate website or even just your careers page.
Okay. Allison, do we have any questions from Twitter?
Yes, we do, Lars. Bryan Chaney, we've got a question actually from @Matt Charney. He said, ask Bryan Chaney how to resolve for the fact that stories are legacy and static, but branding is real-time and dynamic.
Well, branding or your brand, many people have said that it's the conversation people have about you when you're not in the room, right? That's your brand. And storytelling, remember that people within your company are telling your story every day. So remember that as part of that conversation, you can drive the direction. You can correct missteps or misunderstandings. And if you're not part of that conversation, then the only story that they're hearing is the one out there that they can find the easiest. So storytelling is not necessarily one particular instance or one particular video or one particular campaign, but it's telling the story, all different things that make up the whole experience tell the complete story. You're really just sharing one aspect when it comes to, let's just say, a recruitment marketing campaign to share that story. So I'm not sure if that in particularly answered the question. Yep, all right.
Anyone else in the audience? Yep, looks like we've got a question right here. Sir, I'm right behind you. And if you could let us know your name and the company you're from.
Sure. Hi, I'm Joe Howard, MC, and so it's our recruiters that are really telling the story, right? They're telling it real time, 10 times a day, 20 times a day. Some of them are contract recruiters. They're working different types of recs. I mean, what tools or how can I do a better job, getting our recruiters to tell a more consistent story, a more branded story, whether it be via an email or an in-mail, or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've been on both the RPO side and on the corporate side, and I've had to fight that battle to get the recruiters to buy in on what that story is and that it's important to share it and share it consistently. So creating an internal, and newsletter's a bad word, but you get the idea of curating that specific kind of content and sharing it with them so you make it dirt simple so they understand what's been approved, encouraged, and whether or not you're encouraging them to put their own spin on it. Because you're going to have the recruiters who who just copy and paste and share that story, right? Whether it's in a conversation, whether it's in a LinkedIn update, or whether it's in an email, or it's in a dinner conversation. They're the ones who are going to be either saying verbatim what you want said or putting their own spin on it. I personally like to tell people to put their own spin on it, particularly because if you're recruiting a specific kind of skill set, we'll say engineers, a marketing person is not going to talk like an engineer. So you have to customize that sharing by the skill set, by the discipline, and encourage them that it's their story to tell too. So it's not just, it is recruiters by and large. We feel like we can only affect recruiters, but it's not just recruiters, but also the hiring managers within the organization that we serve. They're the ones who can drive a lot of that messaging as well. So remember, recruiters aren't the only ones who tell the story.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question.
Yep. Hold.
Mike is coming.
Here we go.
I'm Brenda from Earl's Restaurants,
Hi,
and
Brenda.
my question is actually just an extension of that. So what are some great tools or tips, besides what you just mentioned, about how to mobilize, say, your entire organization, not just hiring managers, but also employees that have incredible value or engagement around what's going on in the company right now?
So when I worked at a previous company, I lucked out and I actually had someone who worked in corporate marketing that used to work in employer branding. And they were my eyes and ears on the ground at the headquarters because I worked virtually. So I wasn't there to hear and see all the things that were going on. So part of it is making an effort to have a deliberate relationship with marketing so they understand the things that make good stories. And understanding not just, okay, this is an approved press release, but here's something that's happening that has a real human element to the story that you can share, not just because you're hiring, but because it shows who you are as a company of humans. Does that make sense? Do we have time for one more?
We do not. So,
Okay,
Bryan
well,
Chaney, oh, good.
I'm happy to stick around and have further conversations. Thank you very much.
All right.